Okay, so this is chapter 15 of Zodiac. I looked down at the first Zodiac letter in 4 years. Dear editor, this is the Zodiac speaking. I am back with you. Tell Herb Kane I am here. I have always been here. That city pig Takashi is good, but I am smarter and better. He will get tired, then leave me alone. I am waiting for a good movie about me. Who will play me? I am now in control of all things. Yours truly, Zodiac, Guess, SFPD 0. The new letter had been mailed on Monday, April 24th. Although it bore a San Francisco postmark, notations on the cancellation mark designated a Santa Clara or San Mateo County origin. It may only have been processed in San Francisco and mailed from elsewhere. It was the killer's 21st letter since 1969. Taking into account the carved desk, car door, and Riverside letters, the killer had provided the police with 27 separate written communications. As usual, it had too much postage, a subconscious attempt by the killer to rest his message. It was received at the Chronicle about 2:15 p.m., the same time I was on Lake Herman Road with Sergeant Wilson. Brant Parker, a copy person who had only recently returned to the paper, recognized the printing. He gave the letter to Mike Duncan, his boss, and told him it was a new Zodiac letter, the first in 51 months. Duncan opened it anyway and screamed for Duffy Jennings a few desks away. Jennings had taken over the case after Avery had left the Chronicle. Jennings immediately had the letter and envelope photographed by the photo department. He was in the habit of saving up a number of possible Zodiac letters that would trickle into the newspaper and then dropping them off in a bundle to Takashi at Homicide. But Jennings was positive that this letter was authentic, so after trying unsuccessfully to reach Takashi by phone, he took the bus the short distance to the Hall of Justice. Takashi was with his partner, Frank Falzone, trying to serve subpoenas on 3 bikers who had witnessed a double murder in front of the Jack in the Box restaurant on 7th and Market Streets, when he heard his code number on the radio and the message to call his office. There was a police call box at Valencia and 22nd, and Takashi got his secretary. Jennings was standing there waiting to talk to him. "This is the real thing, Dave," said Jennings. "You'll just go nuts when you see it." "See what, Duffy?" said Takashi. "You'll have to come in. I've got to get back to the paper. I'm going to do a story on it. It's very important." Takashi had a pretty good idea of what was waiting just from the excitement in the young reporter's voice. He rushed back to his office. "Deputy Chief Demakis wants you in his office," said Takashi's secretary. It was now 3 p.m. The detective saw the familiar plastic evidence envelope on the deputy chief's desk and the blue-printed letter inside. "I want you to see this," said Demakis. "What do you think?" Takashi was so excited that he could only see a word here and there. The detective was having a hard time focusing on the message as a whole. "This looks really good," said Takashi. Demakis hadn't been with Homicide in the late 60s when Zodiac had kept the city in terror. This excitement over a single letter was new to him. Takashi got on the phone to John Shimoda, head of the Postal Service Crime Lab in San Bruno. "John, I've got a possible Zodiac letter. How much longer are you going to be there?" "Only till about 4:30. Give me 20 minutes. I'll be right there." With the letter still in its plastic envelope, Takashi made 6 Xerox copies, 3 for himself and 3 for Demakis. There was always the possibility Shimoda would want to keep the letter overnight. As Takashi swept past a desk, he shook out a Pall Mall from the package and lit it. Halfway down the elevator, he snatched it out of his mouth. "What the hell? I don't smoke anymore." He got to Shimoda by 4:10 p.m. Using tweezers to carry the letter, the handwriting expert walked to the center of the room, where he had a box of 8 by 10-inch photos of Zodiac letters written up to 1973. After 30 minutes, he looked back. "I'd say he's back." "Are you sure?" "That's your man," said Shimoda. "He's back." "I'll need a note from you saying so. The Chronicle will be running a story no matter what," said Takashi. It's sure enough his writing." Takashi called Demakis from Shimoda's private office and told him the letter had been authenticated. When he got back, he told Duffy Jennings directly from the police garage and told him yes. "It had been a long 4 years," said Takashi. "I could feel the excitement in my body." Even though the Chronicle had photos of the letter and envelope, they held back from printing an actual picture of the message in order to cooperate with the police. SFPD did not want to reveal how little of the letter they were holding back, the closing line. Takashi went directly to Demakis' office. "What are you going to do with the original now?" asked Demakis. "I'm going to take it down to the photo lab." The letter was photographed in Takashi's presence. "I wasn't about to leave it," he told me later. 10 photocopies were also made for other law enforcement agencies. Then Takashi personally took the letter to the crime lab, gave it to print expert Ken Moses, told him it was an authenticated letter from Zodiac, and asked him if he could try and get some prints off it. Moses sprayed it with ninhydrin, but nothing usable appeared. "I'm going to wait until morning and use a sliver nitrate solution to bring out anything the ninhydrin might have missed," he said. The test all proved negative. The letter was booked into the property clerk's office the next day. 9:30 found Demakis at a televised press conference reading the new letter written on the blackboard behind him. "It doesn't appear to be threatening in its context. The tone is very, very different from the letters that have been received in the past," said Demakis. The news people were on Takashi the minute the official press conference was over. He told them that the police would be sending copies of the new Zodiac communication to all countries involved, and that tests made so far showed no prints or clues on the letter and envelope. Saturday, April 29, 1978. Analysis of the killer's letter and speculation about his whereabouts for the last 4 years saturated the news for days, but Takashi was aware that a very tight rein was being held on him. He was assigned a captain to monitor his interviews with the media. Takashi was puzzled by this. I had my own theories on the subject. Takashi had been asked by the city's Italian community to run for sheriff, and one city supervisor planning on a bid for the mayor's seat had him down as her choice for police chief. Intelligent and successful, Takashi was now focused in the public eye since the new letter had singled him out. Demakis, in reaction to the new Zodiac letter, pulled Inspector Tedesco from Special Investigations and Inspector James Deasy from the Gang Task Force and assigned them to the case. "Tedesco will coordinate the effort," said Demakis. "Takashi will continue to be chief field investigator, while Deasy will analyze the data police have assembled. By taking control of the investigation from him, Police Chief Charles Gain, through Demakis, could control Takashi's access to the media." Takashi was also aware that someone was going through his papers. Was this an effort to get something to use against Takashi should he prove a political threat? When reporters asked why Takashi was not put in charge of the effort, Demakis says, "It's impossible for a detective to administrate and investigate at the same time." Takashi was uneasy. He was a sensitive and observant man, and he felt that something was wrong. Friday, May 5th, 1978. "That city picked Takashi is good, but I am smarter and better. He will get tired and leave me alone," Zodiac had written in his new letter. Why had the killer singled him out of all the counties and policemen involved? Had he seen the detective on TV, or read something about Takashi that aroused him or frightened him? Had the investigator come close to discovering the maniac? Was Zodiac's true name in one of the manila envelopes in Takashi's filing drawers, a man already cleared or questioned? "Do you think I should be concerned he mentioned me?" Takashi asked me. "Be careful," I said. Wednesday, June 14th, 1978. Duffy Jennings came over to my desk while I was drawing the next day's editorial cartoon and told me that a confidential meeting had been arranged with Ron People have such hard names. Pimentel of Oakland's Roper Detective Agency and an Oakland policeman versed in handwriting identification. They had what they thought was a hot piece of handprinting relating to Zodiac and wanted our opinion on the sample, as well as a peek at the Chronicle's copies of the letters. There was only one proviso to the meeting. Don't tell Takashi. The Oakland cop wanted to keep his theory secret from his boss. Thursday, June 15th, 1978. Over the phone, the Oakland men would give us only the suspect's first name. He promised to give us the last name only after we gave him our opinion on the 7 pages of writing samples they were to bring with them. The meeting had already been delayed 3 times, and Duffy was getting disgusted. The Roper detective had gotten onto the man's trial after the suspect attended the Zodiac movie 3 times, and the theater management had caught him masturbating in the John after the most violent scenes. The Oakland men were unable to get a fix on him because he dropped his name and address in the box at the Golden Gate Theater to win a motorcycle by telling in 25 words why Zodiac kills. Tom Henson, the movie producer, had pledged $100,000 to the Roper agency if they caught Zodiac, the reward to come from the profits the Zodiac movie would make from the capture. The major motive for the Oakland policeman's involvement was not the money, however, but the credit for the arrest of Zodiac. Inspector Takashi's theory had always been that Zodiac got his sexual satisfaction from masturbating while he wrote. After the meeting was postponed again, I decided to find out who their suspect was, based on the information we had already gotten from them. From their conversations, I knew he lived somewhere in Santa Rosa, kept a locker in San Francisco, was a Vietnam vet, worked as a mechanic, and was from St. Louis. I found him in my file of suspects. He had been checked and cleared by Takashi and Armstrong. The next day, I finally saw the handprinting samples. They were not like Zodiac's writing. Monday, July 10, 1978. One day before Dave Takashi's 47th birthday, after 25 years with the department, 18 of them as a star of the elite homicide bureau, and 9 of them chasing the elusive Zodiac, his entire world fell apart. Shocker in SF Zodiac case, read the headlines in the Oakland Tribune. At 4:55 p.m., Chief Gain issued not only a press release announcing Takashi's transfer from homicide to pawn shop detail, but also a second press release doubting the authenticity of the new Zodiac letter, stating that other experts would now examine it. A complaint dated June 6, 1978 had been filed by Armistead Maupin, a Chronicle columnist, and his public relations man Kenneth Maley against Takashi. Maupin and Maley felt that the latest Zodiac was similar in tone to some anonymous fan letters Maupin had received praising Takashi, and they thought Takashi had written them. In Maupin's popular serial, Tales of the City, Takashi was featured as an advisor to the fictional character Inspector Tandy, whom Takashi eventually arrests as the infamous Zodiac-like mass slayer Tinkerbell. The evening television news spoke of a big political battle with a veteran cop in the middle. Governor Jerry Brown's office offered ex-homicide inspector Takashi any assistance he may need in his case. Duffy Jennings reached Takashi at home. The detective freely admitted writing 3 letters praising himself to Maupin in 1976. It was a silly mistake, said Takashi. He made me the hero of the story, and it was fun for me and my family. So I sent some notes, 3 or 4, saying how good it was that he put a real-life homicide inspector in the column. It was kind of like sending fan mail to myself. It was done in a harmless way. I didn't think anyone was going to be hurt by it. Any suggestions that I faked a Zodiac letter are absolutely absurd. When Chief Gain told me that the state documents expert had checked my handwriting against that of Zodiac's over the weekend, I was shocked. I wrote no Zodiac letter. The fact that Zodiac mentioned me by name for the first time disturbed me and my family very much. I was very unnerved by it. Sherwood Morrill, who had formerly held the post of state handwriting examiner for CI&I, was enraged by the treatment of Takashi. The last letter was by the real Zodiac. There is no question in my mind. I've heard they're accusing Takashi of writing them. If Takashi wrote the last one, he's the Zodiac. He wrote them all. John Shimoda, David DeGuillermo, Pleasant Hill handwriting expert, and Morrill had all agreed the new Zodiac letter was real. I won't work on any Zodiac letters for the San Francisco department from now on, Morrill said. Armstrong and Takashi made the first contact with me, and I was doing it for them. I think Takashi's had too much publicity, and some people may not like it. A silence descended over the Hall of Justice as furtive officials and Takashi's jittering colleagues in homicide were barred by Chief Gain from discussing the Zodiac controversy. Tuesday, July 11, 1978. Carol Takashi showed me into their living room. I saw Dave in a maroon bathrobe just getting up from his chair. It looked as if every bone in his body ached. He was completely exhausted, almost trance-like, with dark circles under his eyes, a shadow of a beard giving his face a bleak look. He had been ill in 1977 with a heart condition and pneumonia at the same time. It was apparent Carol feared for his health. "Look, Dave," she said, "he's brought you some books. Here's one on the big bands." Across the room I could see Channel 2's 10 o'clock news, and I figured Takashi had been watching Mopin's press conference. Nodding toward the set, Takashi said, arms outstretched, "I don't understand what I've done to the man." He put his arms on my shoulder. "I hope you haven't lost respect for me." "Of course not," I said. "Now they're saying I forged the last Zodiac letter," he said. Takashi told me that last Friday at 11 a.m. he had been called in by Demakis to respond to the complaint and been told to think it over. At 1, he was interrogated concerning the allegations. On Saturday at 3:10, Demakis came to Takashi's home and explained that Gain had decided to treat the matter administratively instead of a formal charge before the commission. Takashi was to be transferred effective Monday. A press release was to be drafted saying Dave had written 3 letters to Mopin 2 years ago and signed other names. "Why should there be a press release just because I'm being transferred?" asked Takashi. Chronicle columnist Warren Hinkle, the colorful eye-patched muckraker, wrote that a go-getting writer and a sidekick publicist got the cops and the press to jump through a publicity hoop. Mopin made himself famous this week at the expense of Dave Takashi, a decent cop with a weakness for seeing his name in the paper. The whole thing was a set piece of ruining a man's reputation by innuendo. Police Chief Charles Gain couldn't resist himself from issuing a press release which in effect sentenced Takashi to trial by media before the handwriting experts could have a go at divining the truth. Takashi told the Examiner that linking those notes with the accusation of forgery made me look guilty to the public of forging the Zodiac letters. The mind naturally leaps from one event to the other. A theory has been suggested to me, namely that Mopin and Meili, the only people to gain anything from destroying me, set the police department up to stage a media event that would call attention to Mopin's article in his book. Imagine that, a freelance writer and his publicist says something about a similarity of tone and 25 years of hard work goes down the drain. Can a man be destroyed because of vague accusations about tone? You bet he can. I looked at my notes about Takashi's career, how he dove into the surf by the Cliff House and dragged a woman out, how he saved 3 people from gas fumes in 1953, gave life-saving first aid to a stabbed bartender in 1956, disarmed a disgruntled employee, and cracked a Reno murder in less than 3 hours. I saw how Takashi had almost been killed by twin shotgun blasts from a window in the Mission, and how he had charged up 2 flights of stairs, kicked open the door, and arrested 2 youths. When Takashi went in to clean out his desk, he learned that they had taken his address book to check his handprinting. Supervisor Diane Feinstein spoke out after a visit to Takashi's home, where he was put under medical care. "It's appalling. This man is being unjustly crucified by the department without substantiation in a way that I have never seen another case handled." A week after Takashi's transfer, Gaines stated that Takashi had not written the Zodiac letter, but he felt neither had the real Zodiac. He still considered the Exorcist letter of 1974 genuine. Morrill and DeGuillermo felt that Gain had sabotaged any Zodiac trial in the future. On August 2nd, Gain made public for the first time the reports of 3 handwriting experts. Shimoda, forbidden by his superiors to discuss the Zodiac case, reversed his earlier authentication because he had worked only from photocopies before. Terry Pascoe, a former student of Morrill, said it was forgery. Pascoe's boss, Robert Prouty, had been the one to originally cast doubt on the letter. Keith L. Woodward of LAPD agreed it was a forgery. "But," said Gain, "the writing is manufactured by someone that knows a great deal about the background of the Zodiac's M.O. They knew every little detail of how he wrote. If Zodiac did not write the new letter, then who did?" Saturday, August 5th, 1978. Over vacation, I took a long look at the April Zodiac letter. The writer had correctly used double postage, inverted the stamps, printed "Please rush to editor" with a downward slant, placed the odd punctuation of a colon after "yours truly," used no punctuation after the salutation, and put everyone else's name but his own in lowercase. The letter contained Zodiac's strange spacing between words and letters and used a style of D and 3-stroke K used in 1969. If the new letter was a fake and was done outside of SFPD, what sort of information would be available to a forger without access to the original letters? I carefully clipped every letter and envelope reprinted in the newspapers to see just how much information the general public had been given about the writing of the letters. Most letters had never been reprinted. Those that were cropped or reduced in size. The author of the letters was someone who had seen all of the letters, since character formations not used for 9 years were in the message. One thing did bother me. The phrase, "that city pig," had not been used before. Zodiac usually called the police blue meanies or blue pigs. The second time I went through the letters, I found that phrase, very small and upside down, in the October 5th, 1970 postcard, "City Police Pig Cops." It was hardly the line a forager would reach for in composing a phony letter, but it was a line that would be in the killer's memory. If it were a forgery, no one outside of the police investigation could produce such a perfect copy, incorporating information never before released. For a jealous insider, the motive would be to discredit Takashi, but the forger would have no way of knowing that the letter would ever be found false. The weather this evening was warm, and a shaft of strong sunlight cut through the picture window. I had laid out reproductions of all the Zodiac's correspondence on the rug, and taking advantage of the illumination, I held the April letter over copies of earlier Zodiac communications to see if there were any interesting contradictions. There were none. I took the photocopy of the April letter, tore it neatly in half, and began matching lettering on the top part with lettering on the lower half. They matched perfectly, a little too perfectly. It was as if the writer had used a set of rubber stamps to print the note. No one writes like that. Was the April letter traced, and had Zodiac not returned as I thought? I knew it was common for Zodiac to stop in the middle of a carefully drawn communication and cross out a word, just as he did in the new letter. Why not just redo the letter? It was almost as if he were not writing words, but laboriously printing one single character after another. I tore one of the earlier Zodiac letters in half and held the halves over each other against the intense light. Suddenly I realized how the Zodiac letters had been done. The procedure used was probably like this. Zodiac photographed onto a strip of 35mm film individual letters of the alphabet collected from a variety of sources such as friends or people that he worked with. The film strip was placed into a photographic enlarger, and each individual character was projected from above by the enlarger one at a time onto the paper and traced with a blue felt tip pen. A light table, a table with a glass top illuminated from below to make tracings, might be used in tandem with the overhead projector. The size and slant of the individual characters could be changed by a simple touch of the enlarger or turn of the paper. In using an overhead projector, Zodiac could produce hand printing that was not his own, but a conglomeration of other people's handprinting. The process would be agonizingly slow. This would explain why, in fact, his first letter in more than 3 years, the killer had scratched out words in a neatly drawn letter rather than start over. The killer would have had to access to a private photo darkroom for the considerable periods of time it would take to draft one letter. In using this ingenious process, the killer totally altered his handprinting. The police could check his natural writing and still find no connection to the Zodiac letters. Zodiac had left clues to his untraceable technique all through his letters. The fact is inescapable that not even a professional artist could lay out 340 cipher symbols so neatly in block form, each character identical in size and slant without some sort of projected grid. Somewhere a master alphabet must exist so that future letters could be penned. I was sure that the technique used on the new letter provided the one link that all the communications had in common. The April letter was from Zodiac. He was back. Sherwood Morrill confirmed my theory.